interesting.
All right, happy Sabbath. Let's see. Today is August 5, 2017. And we are going to continue the Realm of Grecia. We're basically going to show that Grecia can mean different prophetic symbols in the end time. All right. Last week, what did we do? We showed the wars between Greece and Persia. Remember? Can you give me a war between Greece and Persia? The battles of what? Marathon. Okay, everybody remembers the Battle of Marathon. What other battles? Thermopylae. What else?
That's it.
Platea. Platea and another one, Salamis. Salamis. All right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but it's good.
Okay. So we're going to continue. And let me see. I'm going to go back one more. We'll go to Daniel 11, verse 10 to 16. But before that, let's just review what happened. Okay. This is Darius, Cambyses, false Marius, Darius the Great. No, Darius the Mede, Cyrus, Cambyses, false Marius, Darius the Great, and then Xerxes. Right? Okay. The kings of Medo-Persia, before they went and conquered Babylon, they went and conquered Greece, right? The Greeks were city-states, right? So they conquered Greece. So here, the Greeks went down because they were being conquered by the Medo-Persians, by Darius. But the thing is that many of the Greek states, Greek city-states, they had rebellions, all right? And rebellion is like the Ionian rebellion. So when they had the Ionian rebellion, the kings of Medo-Persia had to go and try to subdue the rebellion. And that one of the rebellions was actually a battle at the Battle of Marathon, right? And we know who won the Battle of Marathon? The Greeks did. So the Greeks, here the Greeks were subdued, here the Greeks defeated the Persians. So the Greeks rise. So, and that was at the time of Darius the Great. Okay, so that's the Battle of Marathon. And Xerxes, when Xerxes became king, he wanted to stir up all the kingdom against Grecia. So he called everybody from his kingdom, everybody had to send their representatives. And he had a feast. And at that feast, we know at that feast when Vashti did not want to become an object of show, right? And was divorced. Yeah, we know that story, right? And then during that time, he was planning the invasion of Greece, and he went with more than 5 million people. Right? So he was building up. He was building up here. There was not a war yet. He was building up his army. And then when he went to war at Thermopylae. Even though he won a small battle of Thermopylae, eventually it was a stalemate because nobody really won or nobody really lost there. So Thermopylae is not really considered, the battle between Greece and Persia at this time was not really a win situation for the Medo-Persians. They still continued the war because the Greeks, they retreated to Salamis, and in Salamis they beat the Medo-Persians. So Greece wins here, and then they also beat the Medo-Persians at Plataea. So Salamis and Plataea, both wars, Greece wins, right? So Greece wins right here. Okay, now it doesn't go further because in the Bible, you know, it jumps. So basically, Xerxes loses here, right? Xerxes loses, right? And then the next king that comes up is Alexander the Great. And Alexander the Great takes revenge and goes against Medo-Persia and defeats Darius III. Darius III. And his kingdom was a very short kingdom. And then when he dies at 323, his kingdom was divided into 4, right? And that from that 4 it becomes 2, becomes the north and the south. Okay, right. So that was what we did last week. Okay. Now we're gonna go to Daniel. Oh boy, we've done this. We're doing a review of Daniel 11 verse 10 to 16. But his son shall be stirred and shall assemble a multitude of great forces. You know what? It's probably better that we just go directly to the timeline. We've done this before. You can open up your Bible to Daniel 11 verse 10 to 16, and you can follow along. Okay, we can follow along as we go to the timeline. All right, that's Daniel 11 verse 10 to 16. But you can open up, and we'll just go through the timeline here. All right, because we have 2 timelines, 2 lines here. Verse 1 to 4. Verse 1 to 4 is up here, okay? And then we will have verse 10 to 16 down here. So we'll put 10 to 16 down here. And then we will line that up with Marathon, Thermopylae, Salamis, Plataea, right? Because Salamis and Plataea is Greece wins. So if Greece represents Russia, then Russia wins at midnight, okay? Russia wins at midnight. But then Greece takes revenge and defeats. But this is not the same Greece as this, because this is the Empire of Greece. This is now an Empire of Greece, right? This is the city-states of Greece, right? This is the Empire of Greece. Right? That's a different type of Greece, different form of Greece. It's an empire now. Okay, Daniel 11 verse 10. But his sons shall be stirred up. Who's the sons? Seleucus, Cyrenius, and Antiochus III, Magnus. And they go up against Ptolemy Philopator, and overflow and pass over, right? Overflows and pass over, even to his fortress, even to his fortress. It's just like Reagan and Bush, the 2 sons, right? Overflows and pass over, and goes up against Gorbachev, right? Gorbachev. Up to the fortress of Russia, right? Now when we compare it with Darius the Mede starts invading Greece. So USA takes down Russia and takes away the territories of Russia. It doesn't invade Russia itself, but it takes away the territories. You know, starts taking away Poland, Hungary, Romania. You know, all that used to be the Eastern Bloc. But now Lithuania, Tajikistan, all those countries become independent countries. They're taken away. They're no longer under USSR. The territories are taken away. Okay, right? It's like Darius invading the city-states of Greece. All right. Okay. But then we know there's a Greek revolt. The Greeks revolt. It's called the Ionian Revolt. The Greeks revolt, right? And Darius has to invade Greece in retaliation for the Greek revolt, and we know that's at the Battle of Marathon. And he's repelled, because we know here, at the time of Barack Obama, you know, the Russians actually have the upper hand. Russia, what did we say last time? With Snowden, right? Russia invades and annexes Crimea. Russia decides to join the Syrian War and help Bashar al-Assad, and now Bashar al-Assad is winning, right? So Russia wins, so Greece wins, right? Doesn't Greece win here, Marathon? Another thing, during the time of Barack Obama, didn't we find out that Russia hacked the email of the the Democrats?
That's true.
Yeah, it's right. Such that it helped. It was the time of Obama, right?
Yep.
And that actually helped Trump
win.
for Trump to win. Right? So the Russians actually are winning here, right? Just like at the Battle of Marathon. So now Xerxes, he stirs up the kingdom against the realm of Grecia. He consolidates the territories, right? For 1 year. The king of the north, Syria, is consolidating Syria, Palestine, and Phoenicia before he goes and attacks at Raphia, right? Raphia, okay? But so he's building up an army. He's building up an army right here because he's going to go and attack, right? But during that time, there's a stalemate of a kind of like a stalemate of a proxy war. And we know the proxy war that has been going on in Syria has been kind of in a stalemate for many years, right? Yeah. But the issue is that now Russia is winning over there, right? Russia is winning. Okay. So it goes to show you, do you think that we're right now at Thermopylae, or maybe we're past Thermopylae? Because Russia is winning. Before it was kind of like a stalemate. Russia's. It seems like we're almost past this now. Because now America is gonna. Now Greece is gonna go to war with Persia, and Greece is gonna win. So Russia is gonna go to war with America, and Russia is gonna win. And you prove it by Salamis and Plataea. Thing about Salamis is a naval war. What does a naval war mean? Well, it's underwater, but what is it? Uses ships.
Yeah.
Economy.
So what you can see is at midnight, America's economy is gonna be hit. You know what? So we gotta get ready because we don't want.
But then, what would America use? Because there's the Battle of Plataea.
Yeah. The Battle of Plataea is also it's not a naval war, but it's a army. It's a land war. And the other thing about Plataea is that Plataea was, in later times, Plataea became known for the use of weapons of mass destruction. Right. So this is when they start building a bomb, maybe, right? Because we know they're gonna start building a bomb, which then they will use here to destroy America. So maybe there's a weapon of mass destruction somehow that they're gonna start accumulating here so that they can use it here at the midnight cry. Okay. All right. Now let's see. Daniel 11, verse 11. And the king of the south shall move with his collar, and shall come forth. And that's verse 11. That's verse 11. That's the Raphia War, right? The Raphia War. And the king of the north, and he shall set forth a great multitude, but the multitude shall be given into his hand. So Ptolemy the fourth, right, with the help of Egyptian phalangites, with the help of Islam, the king of the south, with the help of Islam, is going to beat the king of the north. Right? Greece wins, Russia wins. Okay, with the help of Islam. All right. So we're lining up the Salamis and Platea at Raphia. Okay, that's verse 11. Now let's go to verse 12. And when he hath come, taken away the multitude, his heart shall be lifted up. So what the king of the south now, after he wins, he's gonna lift his heart up, and he's gonna cast down 10,000s, meaning Russia is going to take away religious freedom, liberty, right? He's going to take away religious liberty, right? Okay, so that's verse 12. Okay, right. Now verse 13. Verse 13 and 15. Verse 13. For the king of the north shall return, and shall set forth a multitude greater than the former, and shall certainly come, and a great army, and with much riches. But the king of the north coming back and defeating is the Panium War, right? The Panium War. That's the king of the north coming and defeating. Right? And in those times, now verse 14, in those times there shall many stand up against the king of the south, and the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves. Now we know that happens between midnight and midnight cry, because this is when the robbers of thy people, who is the robbers of thy people? The papacy shall establish the vision. Now the papacy, what we realize, the papacy will now be compelled to join the treaties. Why is the papacy compelled here? Because Russia wins and America loses. And that's a big problem, because the papacy always wants Russia to lose, right? Yeah. Russia to lose. Okay. Now verse 15. And he cometh against him, and shall do according to his will, and none shall stand before him, and shall stand in the verse 15, sorry. So the king of the north shall come and cast up a mount, and take away the most fenced cities, and the arms of the south shall not withstand. So USA defeats Russia at Panium, right? Now that the country is defeated, here the country was defeated, right? But here, what was defeated here? Was the country of Russia defeated here? No, it was the territories of Russia that was defeated here, right? The territories of Russia was defeated here, and now the country of Russia is defeated here. Okay, all right. So you see the difference there. Now verse 16. Yeah, that's the city-states. But he that cometh against him shall do according to his will. Now who's that? He that cometh against shall do according to will. Who's that? That's Pompey, right? And he shall stand in the glorious land. What's the glorious land? That's in Jerusalem, right? And he shall be. But here we see that according to verse 3, it's Alexander the Great that comes in. Now Alexander the Great is not the same Greece here, because if Alexander the Great is Greece, then how could Russia come in again here? When Russia is already defeated, right? Russia is defeated at Panium. So how come Greece rises up? How could Russia rise up again when Russia has been defeated at Panium? It's a different Greece. Right, because it's a new manifestation of a satanic power. Just like the new manifestation of satanic power that came in the time of the French Revolution, right? The new manifestation of satanic power is atheism. And that's Robespierre coming in and eventually becomes Napoleon. And Napoleon becomes a dictator. And he becomes the dictator that rules the world eventually at that time, right? So that's the manifestation of the satanic power, because now Robespierre toppled the monarchy of Louis XVI, right? The feudal system was toppled, and it was taken over, and it became a communist country, right? So this is a manifestation of a new power, right? And this is the United Nations. So the United Nations rise up, but then it's divided into four, right? It's divided into four. Divided into four, you can think of it as it's receiving the four sword judgments, right? It receives the four sword judgments, okay? And eventually it's divided into four, and then it's given to Rome, okay? It's given to Rome, the eighth kingdom, okay? So now that we put all these lines, Salamis, Plataea, Raphia, right at midnight. Panium at midnight cry, right? What other war here in Jerusalem? Here is Pompey conquering Jerusalem here. But what other line can we put here about Jerusalem? Cestius. Here is Cestius coming, and who comes here? If Cestius comes here, who comes here? Titus also comes here, right? Cestius and Titus. So we can put, wow, later on we can see that we can put so many wars. And I'm going to try to put it on, but there's too many wars. There's become so many wars that it won't fit. I have to put it on two slides. Yeah, it becomes, then I make the icons very tiny to fit it. Then there's too much. Okay. All right, but we're going to continue. We're going to continue Daniel 11, verse 20 to 23 to 29. But what we're going to do is just kind of go through the highlight of this. We've done this. This is just a review. The review of the league that is made between the Romans and the Israel and Judah, right? And that is followed by a deceit. So the Judeo-Roman League is followed by a deceit, right? In verse 23, the Jewish-Roman League was followed by deceit. Okay, if you think about it, when the Judeo-Roman League was made by the Maccabees, remember?
Yeah.
Why? They wanted to get out from the constant domination of Syria, right? Syria was constantly dominating them, right? So they made an alliance with Rome, right? But did Rome eventually continually to keep that league, that alliance? No. The Rome reneges. Rome will always renege on his alliance, right? And come back and defeat his ally, right? So when was it that Rome came back and defeated his ally? Well, obviously Cestius and Titus, right? They came and completely defeated them, right? Yeah. All right. Okay, but this is the story of when and he shall enter peaceably even to the fattest land, right? This is Rome entering into Egypt, right? And he shall scatter them the prey, spoil, and riches. And he shall scatter his devices against the strongholds, even for a time. So now, for one time, for 360 years, Rome becomes a mighty kingdom, right? 360 years, from the Battle of Actium until the time that Constantine took his capital and moved it to Constantinople. All right, that's 360 years, right? And the king of the south shall, okay, here we go. But both these kings' heart shall be to do mischief, and they shall speak lies at one table, but it shall not prosper, for yet the time shall be at the time appointed. Now this was and literally on the typical, this was when during the time of okay, let's see. It was the time of I'm blanking out right now. It was the time of let's see. When Egypt, Rome, okay, Rome conquered Egypt, and it was Julius Caesar, right? Julius Caesar comes down and conquers Egypt, but then it was Mark Antony that made a league with Cleopatra. And then who had to come down and defeat Mark Antony? No, it was not. No, it was not. Who had to come down?
Pompey?
Well, Pompey is already killed. Who was the Roman leader after Julius Caesar? Augustus, right? So Augustus had to go and fight Mark Antony. But after they fought, what did they do? They sat at the same table and speak lies to each other. So they made a treaty, right? The king of the north and the king of the south made a treaty. But it was all lies, because eventually he's going to be defeated. The king of the south will be defeated. So between the time when between Raphia and Panium, there will be treaties made between America and Russia, but it's going to be lies, treaties of lies, right? Because eventually America is going to make an attack and defeat Russia with the help of the papacy. All right, okay. So all those, there's going to be deceit at the time of, right? And we know that deceit also happens during the time of Cestius and Titus. Okay, right. Let's see here. This is the Judeo-Roman League. One was in 161 and 158. There was two leagues that they make. Okay, but we know these leagues also happens at midnight and at the midnight cry, because you will always see a threefold union, right? A threefold union will always be seen at midnight and midnight cry and the Sunday law, right? Verse 29, okay. Verse 29, you'll see America goes down and United Nations climb up, right? United Nations rising up, right? So that's verse 29. We remember that the league was made between the Jewish church and the Roman government, right? To persecute the virgins, right? The wise virgins, betrayal by the false prophet to spiritual Israel. That's midnight. There's going to be also a kind of like an alliance here too. There's going to be an alliance, the triumvirate here. But during that time, it's the rise of United Nations, the rise of Empire of Greece, and the fall of America. America is going to fall. Okay, we're going to see it on verse 29. Okay, now where do we see this? We see this also in verse 16. But he that cometh against him shall do according to his will, and none shall stand before him. and he shall stand in the glorious land, which by his hand shall be consumed. Right? So this is the story of when Antiochus Epiphanes, he decides that he is going to invade the king of the south. He's going to invade Ptolemy in the south. But when he gets down towards Egypt, Rome sends a Popilius, who draws a circle around the king and demanded his answer before he left the circle, right? That he was not going to invade the king of the south, right? Now this happens in 168 BC, right? 168 BC. And this is called the Sixth Syrian War. This hasn't been, a lot of people get this confused. Let's see, what happens at the Sixth Syrian War? We know that the king of the north, right, wants to go against the king of the south, but Rome steps in and says, no, you cannot fight against the king of the south, right? But the issue is that this happens after the midnight cry when you put it on a line, right? When you put it on a line. So the king of the south is no longer Russia, because Russia is already lost. On the Fifth Syrian War at Panium, on the Sixth Syrian War, who's now the king of the south? That Rome says, okay, America, you're not allowed to become the ruler of this United Nations, because America wants to always become the ruler of the world. But America is going down because the papacy already has conquered, has accomplished its goal in defeating Russia, right? It wants to, that's its secret war, its secret of Fatima, the second secret of Fatima, right? Russia needs to be conquered. We have to defeat Russia so that the world will be at peace. So now that Russia is already conquered, the papacy is going to use another kingdom now, right? United Nations. So now it says, okay, you are not allowed to invade the king of the south, because the king of the south now is no longer Russia. It's now the United Nations, right? Right. And so that there will be a peace, because now Russia is already conquered. The secret of Fatima is fulfilled. So now it is going to be peace on earth. What is the papacy's solution for peace on earth? What do you think? Yeah, he's going to be the corrector of heretics. His is the one world government. What is the one world government? The new world order. And how does he accomplish the new world order? With the United Nations. The new world order is actually accomplished by the United Nations. Now, if we're going to study this when we go into the World War. But who was it that was the advocate for the League of Nations when the League of Nations was first made after the First World War? Who was the advocate? Woodrow Wilson. But Woodrow Wilson got his idea from who? It's actually the Pope.
Who's Woodrow Wilson?
Woodrow Wilson was the American president. He says we have to have a League of Nations. We just had this big World War I, and we cannot have another World War I. So he said we should have a League of Nations. But the League of Nations was actually the brainchild of the papacy, right? So that's the League of Nations become eventually the United Nations, right? And the United Nations is essentially the new world order according to the papacy. So you see that? Right? That's the Sixth Syrian War, because America wants to be the leader of the world still, but America is no longer. Russia is already defeated, so now it needs to have a new world order according to the papacy, right? That's the Sixth Syrian War. Okay.
Wasn't it Bush who made a speech in the United Nations about the New World Order?
Yeah, and that new world order is the United Nations.
He was in the United Nations.
Yeah, that's right.
When Obama was there, he was promoting it.
So this is a little bit complicated, but then when we actually can see this, it makes sense, right? Because now the king of the south is no longer Russia. It's now United Nations at the Sixth Syrian War. And look at this, it's actually 168 BC. Now the other thing is that what happened in 168 BC in another part of the Roman kingdom? In another, no, not the part of the Roman kingdom, another part of Central Asia, right? Is the Battle of Pydna, 168 BC. Right. Now, the Battle of Pydna is right here. Okay? It's in Greece. It's in Greece. Right? What happens at the Battle of Pydna, 168 BC, is Rome decides to attack Syria. Now, remember, Syria was, Syria essentially has conquers all of this territory, right? Right. Syria controls all of this territory, and for Rome, it's the Seleucid Empire, right? The Seleucid Empire. Right? For Rome to start to be able to conquer the Seleucid Empire, it first does so by conquering Greece here at Pydna. So Rome restrains Syria and defeats Egypt, remember, at the Sixth Syrian War, right? But at this same war is Rome defeats Greece, right? Defeats Greece at the War of Pydna, the Battle of Pydna. Okay? Now the Greeks, they use this, right? They use this big long, I guess what do you call that? They have a name for it. I can't remember the name. In Indonesia, you call it tombak. You got this big, very long sticks, right? Yeah. And the problem is this. What do you see would be the biggest problem? Well, this was obviously very strong as long as they stick together, right? Right. How would you defeat this? One way you can defeat this is if the terrain was very uneven, right? Because if you have a big open battle, you can stay in formation, and this would be very powerful, right? The Romans, they use very small legions, and their weapons are very small, so they can get in between these and disrupt the unity of these phalangites. And this is when the legions of the Romans, which was very, very disciplined, right, defeated the phalangites. Because the issue is that the phalangites were mercenaries, and they were not as disciplined as the Roman legions. Right? And then these Roman legions, they used very small arms. So you can fight, you can go in there and then disrupt this, and pretty soon, yeah, once you disrupt the unity of a phalangite, it breaks apart. So the Romans were able to defeat them, right? So the phalangites cannot hold rank on uneven terrain. And when small bands of legions attack them from different sides with shorter, lighter swords, the long, heavy pikes, okay, these are the long, heavy pikes, was very difficult to maneuver, right, against these small swords. Right? So that was the Battle of Pydna. So Rome starts exerting its power, okay, exerting its power in Greece, right, and also in Egypt, right. So so this is when we're studying about Rome, we'll see this is starting to become where they used to be a republic, but when they start conquering the world, they start to become an empire, right? And this is the study. This study is essentially showing how the Roman Republic now declines, and it morphs into a Roman Empire, because our pioneers already saw that the Rome essentially mirrors America. America was a republic, right? It was a republicanism and Protestantism. It was a republic, but then it's going to morph into an empire. Right? And the pioneer, right, that wrote about this is A.T. Jones. He's a very good historian, right? He wrote about the two republics of Rome and the United States of America. So he says Rome represents America, right? Rome represents America. And so a lot of this study actually comes from A.T. Jones' premise of what happens to America. And he says, well, you know what? How does he divide up his study? All right, is chapter 1 here, right? This is the titles of the chapters. Okay, he identifies 4 leaders: Caius Gracchus, Marius, Sulla, and then Pompey. All right, Caius Gracchus, Marius, Sulla, and Pompey. And then Sulla, Pompey, and Caesar. By the time it comes to Caesar, it is already an empire. But these four leaders, right? Gracchus, Marius, Sulla, and Pompey were like the last 4 leaders that represents the downfall of the Roman Republic. So what we're saying is that there's going to be 4 American presidents that will cause the downfall of the United States Republic and change it into a dictatorship, right? Because an empire is basically led by an emperor who's the dictator. So it's going to be changed from a United States Republic to a United States dictatorship. All right? Okay. All right, I'll try to get the what here. All right. Rome, in its different phases, occupies the largest place of any national name in history. Rome, considered with reference to government, is interesting and important. Considering with reference to religion, it is yet more interesting and more important. But when considered with reference to its interrelationship of government and religion, it is most interesting and most important. It is Rome in its last phase that is the principal subject of the study of this book. As in this particular, Rome occupies on extreme, and the United States of America the other. The latter is considered also through the plan and the limit of this book has made it necessary to give less space to this than the subject deserves. The principle of Rome in all its phases is that religion and government are inseparable. The principle and government of the United States is that the religion is equally distinct and totally separate from civil government and entirely exempt from its cognizance. The principle of Rome is the abject slavery of the mind. The principle of the United States is the absolute freedom of the mind. As it Christianity that first and always antagonizes the government principle of Rome and established the government principle of the United States, the fundamental idea. The one thread thought of the whole book is to develop the principle of Christianity with reference to civil government and to portray the mischievous results of the least departure from these principles. So Rome departs from its principles of republican, from becoming a republic and becomes an empire. But it also shows that what's going to happen to America. It's going to depart from its constitution and its principles, right? Okay, and become an empire. They themselves recognized what was going on, but the tide was too strong. They could not stand it. They had taken the step, but they cannot turn it back. So once it started on the downfall of republicanism to become a dictatorship, it cannot be stopped. It starts going. They believed that destiny was upon them, and so they went on, step after another in that direction, until the world knows. The prophecy was recorded there. There comes the greatest civil despotism, right? What is despotism? Despotism is a despot, which is a dictatorship, right? Then the great despotism of any kind, a religious despotism. And then the greatest ruin that ever was wrought in government affairs in this world, the ruin of the Roman Empire. Okay, so there was two kinds of parties. There was the optimates and the populares. The optimates were the ones that always defended the Roman Senate. Okay, and then they were the kind of like the conservatives, and the populares were the ones that defended the people, the populares, the people. In other words, they're like more the liberals. These are like the Republicans. These are like the Democrats, right? You can see that, right? This is, they want to defend the central government. This one, they want to defend the rights of the people, right? Okay, but it always is like it always turns around. It reminds me about the cycle of bondage.
What book is this by
A.T. Jones, Adventist Review and Sabbath Herald. It's actually in the Adventist Review, right? It's like the optimists. Once it starts, it cannot. They start off with bondage, but then they have spiritual faith. They rise up to become a good republic with the Republican principles. But then they have liberty, and then they have abundance, and then complacency, left with apathy, and they go back to bondage. So they want to it becomes a big cycle from republicanism and eventually to despotism, popularis, and then eventually despotism, right? Yeah. It goes into this cycle all the time, right? Yeah. We see that same thing, and it seems to them they cannot, right? Once they start down that road, despotism will always emerge at the end, right? They become dependents, and they go to bondage again under a dictator or a despotism, right? And this is what we're going to see with the presidents, right? Now I ask again, why was so much said of Rome in the book of Daniel? To be a light in the time of the end, for prophecy as a light that shineth in the dark place, whereunto you do well that you take heed. Why is it so much that Rome, always Rome upon Rome and upon Rome? Yeah, it's always about Rome, okay? It's always about Rome. So you can read this, I'm not going to go through all of this, but so much is about Rome. Because why? Rome establishes the vision. And at the end, all the way to the end, it's Rome that eventually conquers the world, conquers God's people, right? Persecutes God's people, although some will escape. And the end, it's Rome that falls, right? All the way to the end. From the time it establishes the vision until the time of the end, it's going to be all about Rome. Okay, it's about the vision. Okay, so we're going to study a little bit. We're going to go into a little bit of the history here. Now, this might be a little obscure, but you can see that it follows exactly kind of like our presidents, right? So we're going to go with our presidents here, right? Okay, this is 1989. 1989, right? Bush and Reagan. Okay, so we're going to put the Battle of Pydna here, because Bush and Reagan basically defeats Russia, USSR, right? Okay, in the Battle of Pydna, Rome defeats Greece. Yeah, Greece is like Russia, right?
Yes,
Greece is, yeah, USSR or Russia also, right? And then also that's at 168 BC. Another very obviously interesting is because the Sixth Syrian War, Rome prevents the king of the north, Syria, from going over and conquering Egypt. So that's like, you get so many different meanings there. So many different meanings. Okay, but now we will see that there's going to be 4 leaders, right? And A.T. Jones specifically points out Cato the Elder. Have you studied Cato the Elder? Actually, in your world history, did you study Cato the Elder? Right, you did?
I heard of it.
You heard of him? Okay.
You don't go in depth.
Well, is that one thing about Cato the Elder, right? One thing about Cato the Elder, right? He was a prominent politician at the time and this time period, right? His time period was around 195 BC, right? 195 BC. Oh, sorry, I have to go back. All right. He's Cato the Elder, right? Cato the Elder. Okay, his name is Cato the Elder. Right. His biggest, what he's most famously known is his conservative ideas that Rome has to stick with the principles of Rome republicanism for why it became so strong. Okay, he was opposed to the spread of Hellenistic culture, Greece.
So that means he's a conservative?
Yeah, he was a conservative. Yeah, he did not want the spread of Hellenistic culture, which he believed threatened to destroy the rugged simplicity of conventional Roman type. Right?
Yeah.
Right. So there was a big war against Carthage, and Carthage, basically kind of espoused the liberal principles, right? And when he saw that the people were kind of like leaning towards Carthage and wanted to be, wanted to give up Roman standards, right? They wanted to become more liberal. Cato the Elder, he always ended at the end of his speech, he always says, "Delenda est Carthago." Carthage must be destroyed, right?
You don't like Carthage.
Yeah.
Who's that? Who's JVHC?
What is Carthage?
Joshua V. Hines.
Nice.
Yeah. Joshua behind. Carthage is, remember, it's Tunisia.
It's North Africa.
It's North Africa, right? But Carthage was becoming very prosperous, right? And he thought, unless Carthage was defeated, Rome will never be secure, because Carthage is always going to be a thorn at the side and always kind of like invading a Roman culture, not necessarily militarily, but also with its ideas, right? His Hellenistic ideas. Hellenistic is Greek. He didn't like it, and all the time he says Carthage must be destroyed. Now this saying is very famous, even until now. Every time a politician, right? Every time a politician wants to emphasize the strength of his opinion against a perceived attack that is necessary to be to be averted, right? He will always say, Cato the Elder always ended his speech by saying that Carthage must be destroyed. And they always will say, Delanda est Carthago. You know what? Even Vladimir Putin,
He said that.
he quoted Cato the Elder. And he says, Carthage must be defeated. Now, who is he referring to?
The US.
Who is he referring to?
The US.
The US.
What?
He says the old enemy of Russia must be defeated. Now you look it up. I just saw it in one of his when Putin was put all these politicians, when they want to refer to their old enemy, right? They always say Carthage must be defeated. So when you hear anybody talking about Carthage must be defeated by a politician, you know they're talking about their old enemy must be defeated, right? Even Putin uses it in his speech, right? I thought that was very interesting, because people want to show how they're a student of, they're well versed in history. So they will quote Cato the Elder, and people go, whoa, you can quote Cato the Elder. You must be well versed, right? Yeah. Okay. But anyway, Cato the Elder. That's you want to get anything out of this study? There you go, Cato the Elder. This represents George Bush. Because who was George Bush's old enemy? The Russians. What was George Bush before he became president? He's the CIA director. He was always fighting against who?
The Reds.
The Reds. He was always against Russia, right? This is George Bush. He needed to get during the time of in 1989, right? It was his time, right? He was president in 1989. The USSR had to fall, right? Yeah. Carthage must be destroyed. All right. Okay. Okay. Now who's the next one? Gracchi, right? Now Gracchi is actually two brothers, right? Two brothers. Now these two brothers, they come up from the plebeians, right? And these plebeians made a tribune. They made a kind of like a tribunate, and the plebeians, the regular people, can actually rule also, right? And when they were given a power, what they wanted to do is they want to give more power to the people. Okay, that more people will get more food, right? And now,
Land reform.
yeah, land reform. More people, the people can get more food, right? The government will support the people, right? Now, what is that?
It's like
They're democratic.
Obama.
Yeah, it's that democratic, just like, right? Okay.
Clinton and Obama.
Yeah, the tribunes, they wanted to, the tribune of the people, they want to have public granaries to be filled and maintained at the cost of the state, right? And they wanted to give the people of Carthage more independence. Wait a minute, you know what? Cato the Elder says, no, we don't want that. Cato the Elder says, no, we have to defeat Carthage. Then, see here, they said, oh, you know what? We have to give them more. The Gracchis, right? They were much more liberal, right? Okay, the Gracchis. What was amazing is that these Gracchis, there's two of them that was famous, one after the other. One was killed, but during that time, there was two that become famous. They become they're actually Gracchus. It was actually Gracchus. What was his name? Tiberius Gracchus and Gaius Gracchus. They become famous. There's two Gracchus. Wasn't there two Clintons that was famous at the time when Bill Clinton became president? At the end of his presidency, his wife was also a senator in New York, right? It's just like two Gracchis were ruling in America, and they wanted to. They were like Democrats. They was give the people, right? The public granaries, and they maintain at the state at the cost of the state. Right? In the long contest between the people and the Senate, which ended in the establishment of an imperial form of government, the first decisive step was taken by Tiberius Gracchus, who was elected tribune of the people in 133 BC. In just 9 years after the death of Tiberius Gracchus, his brother Caius was elected a tribune and took up the work in behalf of which Tiberius had lost his life. So there's two Gracchi, okay? And you can see that it kind of represents the Clintons, right? Okay, now the next one is Marius, right? Marius was a general. Now this general, he became a consul, but he was very conservative, right? At the times that he realized there was an imminent danger from the barbarians, right? The barbarians were constantly attacking Rome. So there was always this big imminent danger from outside. Because of this, because of the imminent danger, he saw that he needed to suspend the constitution because of the imminent danger that was the barbarians attacking them. So he suspended the constitution, and he says we need to have a dictator, right? While Marius was in Africa, the largest army of Rome had ever sent against an enemy was by these savages swept out of the existence. But although the generalship of Marius was now urgently needed, his consulship had expired, and there was no precedent for electing the same person consul a second time. In times of imminent danger, it was in the province of the Senate to suspend the constitution, declare the state in danger, and appoint a dictator. Right? Do you see that the constitution was changed at the time of George Bush? Because there was an imminent danger from the outside, right? 9/11, right? The barbarians. Who are the barbarians? The trumpet power. Wasn't Islam a trumpet power? Posing an imminent danger so that the constitution can be changed. You see, just like George Bush right there. Marius. Okay, now Sulla. Now who's Sulla?
Caesar.
Yeah, Sulla was a general also. Right. Lucius Cornelius Sulla returned the power to the Senate. Now he returned the power to the Senate now. Right? All right.
So
Sulla's, yeah, what was that?
who are these people, Marius, Sulla, from which country?
Rome.
It's Rome. They're all the leaders of Rome.
Leaders of Rome.
right? But you can see that these people eventually brought down the republic, the Roman Republic, and changed it into a dictatorship. Because it used to be that it was a senate, a group of people. It was a group of people that, by Republican, by votes. Okay, they want to do something, they did it by votes of the Senate, right? It was a Senate. They had senators and consuls and all that. But eventually, they changed it to become a dictatorship. There's one person as the leader. Before, it used to be a Senate. It used to be like a republic, right? Okay. Now, Sulla's dictatorship came during a high point in the struggle between Ottomans and Pompey. They want to maintain the Senate's oligarchy and the later espousing populism. They wanted to make the Senate come back again, right? They wanted to retain, they wanted to go back and become more democratic, right? As soon as he had made his position secure, he entered upon a course of continuous and systematic murder of all who had in any given way given support to Cinna or Marius, right? He wanted the reverse. He wanted it to go back to a Senate type of, he had the Senate to appoint him dictator and made him master of everything and everybody in Italy. The Liberal Party was extinguished in their own blood. Thus the power of the Senate was made absolute. Now it was the Senate that came back. Now the Senate was more republic, right? Now that's the same as the time of Obama. Because now at the time of Obama is when it's now the power is given to the people, right? The power is given to the people. Now the the Obamacare, all these things that we can see, the
More EVPs.
yeah, everything is for things are power for the people, power for the people.
I
Okay.
feel like that'd be more in Sulla's time power to the government than power to the people.
Well, actually he had it given back to. He did it in a dictatorship kind of way, but he gave it. But he gave it back to the Senate.
Yeah,
Right.
the Senate.
But the Senate is elected by the people, right? Right? They elect senators,
Yeah,
right? So there's a lot of senators.
yeah.
Yeah. Even though he did it in a dictator time, he said I'm the dictator, but he actually gave power to the Senate, which the senators are all elected by the people.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay. Now, some of this is kind of sounds obscure, but when you see, you realize, wow, yeah, we never heard about Marius and Sulla and Gracchi. Well, I heard about Cato the Elder, but now I know a little bit more about Cato the Elder. But Sulla and all this, right? But you see, this A.T. Jones, he studied history, and he can see the fall of the Roman Republic.
So how is Sulla line up with Obama?
Because he gives the power back to the people, right? And now during the Obama's time, everybody gets healthcare insurance, right? Yeah. And all the gays, they can have their liberties.
They can use.
You want to have let's all legalize marijuana,
Yes.
right? Right. Okay. Now I keep going forward too fast. Okay, so now Pompey. Then it comes the time of Pompey. Now the thing about Pompey though is even though he was born of nobility, his republic was more of populist principles, right? What he did was he reversed all the things that Sulla did. This is so famous for him. He reversed everything that Sulla wanted done, right? That's one of the things that's what he did, okay? And the problem with Pompey, even though he was a good general, he was not a politician, right? Yeah. And during the time of Pompey is when he went and defeated Syria. And this is when USA will eventually defeat Russia at Panium. Okay, so then during the time of Pompey, right? What the other thing is what Pompey did. Pompey and Crassus were made consuls for the year. The Senate actually had two consuls, right? And the two consuls, Pompey and Crassus, they were made consuls for 1 year, and they cannot be repeated as consuls. Every year there have to be two consuls, and you cannot be a repeat as a consul. Okay, that's the leader of the Senate, right? Sulla's legislation was undone. They reversed everything that Sulla did, and everything was set back as it had been before. The power of the tribunes were fully restored, so they give it back to the tribunes, and also the right of the populace to assemble at their own wish. The public granaries were once more open. The mob was happy. The Senate was embittered, and the way was open for the full tidal of political violence which immediately followed. So Pompey, he reversed everything that Obama did. Is Trump reversing the things that Obama did? Is he reversing the gays in the military? Reversing the marijuana? He's going to reverse the marijuana laws. They're becoming more. You remember what is against the marijuanas? One of what it says that it is causing the dumbing of America, and he wants one of the cabinet leaders does not want the marijuana laws, right? And he wants Obama's Obamacare wants to be repealed by Trump, although they're having a difficult time. They haven't been able to do it. Okay, but that's what they want to do. Okay, one important thing is that during the time of Pompey and Crassus, there was and you have it here, right? There's the Servile War. Do you know the story of Spartacus?
Yeah, they made it into a movie.
Yeah. What's the story of Spartacus? Do you know the story of Spartacus? It's made into a Hollywood movie.
Yeah.
Spartacus was a what? Is a gladiator. And the gladiators, they always fight against each other, and they was always they're like the slaves that they had to fight each other. So they decided they rebelled, and they made their little own army, right? And they wanted to go against the Romans. They want to be independent, and because they were the gladiators, they wanted to rebel. So they had a rebellion, right? So Pompey and Crassus, they had to subdue a gladiator uprising, right? Here are the gladiators. Okay, all right, right. But they were the people that used to fight they were the mercenaries.
Yeah.
Right.
Slaves.
So who are the mercenaries that used by Rome, by America, that goes fight their own wars right now? Yeah, it's that they're going to have a rebellion, but they have to be subjugated. Okay, right. Right. There is a war by the mercenaries. The mercenaries want their independence, but then these mercenaries will have to be subdued and subjugated. All right, and you can see that. So we got to put this on the line now. We're gonna put this on the line now, right here. Okay, so there's Cato. Cato is like George Bush. He says what? Carthage must be destroyed. Russia must be destroyed. Okay, and he was successful. All right. The Gracchis. The Gracchis is like the Clintons, right? The power was with the Senate. The power was with the tribunate, right? But Marius, he took back the power and he says, well, you know what? During the time of imminent danger, we can change the Constitution. Oh boy, exactly, just like Bush. But then Sulla came and gave the power back to the people, right? Yeah. And then Pompey, he reversed everything that Sulla did, right? And the thing that there's multiple quotes here that I'm going to read. Sulla was, Pompey, he was not a politician, right? Was Trump a politician?
No.
He wasn't a politician, right? Pompey's route to power had been unorthodox. Yeah. Pompey's successes were largely mopping up operations in the wake of real successes achieved by others. Pompey was a man of immense arrogance. In his own eyes, he was the king of Rome, in all but name, right? Pompey, although he was a military genius, he was a political novice. All right.
With Julius Caesar.
Right. And then Pompey resorted to bribery. They promoted factional violence. And there was a civil war during the time of Pompey, there was a civil war, and there was a renewed call for a stronger dictator, right? So Pompey here, remember, Pompey and Crassus, they had to subdue a servile uprising by the gladiators, right? But Pompey and Crassus, well, okay, this lines up at midnight here. Lines up at midnight because that's Trump here. Pompey and Crassus makes a triumvirate, which is the first triumvirate that we see in the first Roman triumvirate. And which was the first Roman triumvirate? It was between Pompey, Crassus, and Julius Caesar, right? The first triumvirate, right? This is the first triumvirate. Now, Crassus was the most rich person. He was the richest. Pompey was Pompey was a military leader. Julius, I can't remember what Julius was known for. Okay. All right. But they made an alliance, the first triumvirate. So we see a triumvirate here. But Crassus was then killed. Right? Crassus was then killed. Let me see. Oh, sorry. I have to go back. Crassus was then killed. And then Pompey was then killed. And then Julius remained as the remaining leader, right? And Julius was the one that conquered. Okay, Pompey conquered Syria, and then conquered Israel, and then Julius Caesar conquered Egypt, right? So we put this at midnight. And the midnight cry, because this lines up with Trump, right? At the Sunday law, when Israel falls, when Israel, the glorious land, is conquered, right, by Pompey, Julius Caesar will eventually become, he calls himself the dictator, right? And he goes and conquers Egypt. And this is eventually the symbol for the papacy, right? This is the symbol for the papacy because the papacy will eventually conquer. Egypt is also the dragon, which is also the United Nations, right? So now you see, there's so many different meanings.
So who's the first monarchist
Hmm?
in the transition from republican to monarchy?
So no, but from the transition to an empire.
Yeah.
This is the republic. the republic basically falls. But Pompey becomes he essentially becomes the first ruler, right? But the first dictator is actually Julius Caesar. He calls himself emperor, but he never was actually elected emperor, because eventually it was Augustus Caesar that became the first emperor, right? But all these were, you see the history of how the republic fell and eventually became a dictatorship here, because America will become a dictatorship, right? So we will see that in the history between Midnight Cry and Midnight Cry and the Sunday Law, because that's when America goes down, but then the leader of America will become the leader of the United Nations, and that's like Napoleon becomes the dictator, right? He becomes the dictator, and then he will rule the world at that time. Julius Caesar will also become the dictator, and then he will conquer Egypt, right? Conquer the United Nations. It's like the papacy will eventually conquer, right? America. Okay. So that's basically that's a little bit complicated. Even for me, I don't have 100% grasp of this. I have to go over it over and over again, right? But we can see, what is obvious is we can see the timeline that it shows the fall of the Roman Republic and the rise of the Roman Empire. And we will see the fall of the American Republic and rise of the American Empire, right? And he will become the dictator, right? He will become the dictator. Okay. So, yeah, this bears more study, but I think this is a very compelling, argument of what actually happens, right? Right, and that is a more sure word of prophecy.
How did Pompey